My friends, my many good friends and compatriots of the living, things have been very busy here at the studio. It is, unfortunately, mostly vital work for the purposes of containing the invaders. Although this is like saying that a desert island has contained the ocean around it. Reality engages our stress responses, and hence we know we are still alive. How about that, eh? Well, today's episode is, like us, an increasingly rare breed. The powers that be, on the living side at the very least, do not see the merit in our humble dead files. They have something rather different in mind. And so I'm here to teach you a last few things while I still can, and to prepare you for what the international specimen dealers have planned. I am told, my good friends, that these plans will come to the rescue of us all. But I have glanced at these notes, and I must say I will be with you, audience, in requiring some convincing of that. So we had best begin. This all concerns a place I have mentioned to you in passing, called Louisville, the diamond of Knox County. And like any good diamond, it has been encaged in a metal ring so that it will not slip away from us. I think we already appreciate that living in close proximity to other people brings with it great danger. In the cities, well, let's see how a couple of people got on, eh? Dead 16, Domingo Manini. Dom here was a model student. Now he's dead, so listen if you dare. Dom lived in a tall red brick townhouse in the heart of Louisville City, and he was able to catch a snippet of a broadcast on the fateful morning instructing everyone to stay in their homes. And so he did. What a well-trained citizen. For a week he dared not venture out into the street, and could see full well what was happening out there. He broke the shelves off his walls and boarded up the windows. He barricaded the door. He inventorized and rationed his food supplies. He was a masterpiece in urban survival, good old Dom. But to be an urbanite is, as much as you all hate to admit it, to rely on the aid of others at all times. Without this, there is no hope. More precisely, there was no supply of food. Therefore, as Dom gradually ate through his supplies, waiting and wishing for perhaps promised rescue, the last dregs of our species' accumulated powers of survival drained away. Thousands of years of progress, but you still only have a few days to live if you're left alone. We are helpless babies still, aren't we? We need guiding hands from birth to death. Oh, but those already taken do have that help, for this bacterial infection is all the solace they seem to need. Dearie me. We swig and we carry on. Dom, facing death one way or another, carefully opened his front door. The street was quiet, resting below a thick mist. Shadows shuffled here and there, not noticing Dom slither to the next house down the street. Abandoned, with its stores intact. Ideal. Dom carefully let himself in, closed the curtains, and began filling a suitcase with all the things he would need to wait out a few more days. Surely then the rescuers would make it in? Ah no, Dom wasn't so naive. Radio broadcasts don't all cut out, televisions don't show only static, and the sky doesn't empty itself of contrails in a world where rescue remained in play. There was no rescue, no Louisville, and hell, there was no Domingo Manini, if one appreciates that the very institutions with which legal names for citizens are registered now no longer exist. You are utterly free. Free to burn out and be as peaceful as ash in any corner of this boundless world. Save for the military boundary around Louisville, but that is something I am to tell you about in the future. Dom, in his search of this house, encountered its former owner locked in a bedroom. So that was why the supplies were untouched. Dom, conversely, was touched very thoroughly, including in places underneath his skin. Ah, we still like to have fun, don't we? I am of course saying that he was mauled in a bloody ambush. Dom died a few hours later while trying to run for help. Strange words these are to us here at the Dead Files. Run, help, later. Might as well be the names of Greek gods, ancient legends from a time one cannot bear to remember. Dom died in such a fashion that will become familiar to you quickly if you're placed in his shoes. For while I mocked and belittled the country folk for their strange ways, it is they who will inherit the earth, if any, and it needn't be any. We have one more dead to cover before I get back to that topic, though. A different approach to life in a fallen city. Stay your hopes and take your notes as we meet. Dead 17, Haley Jett. Haley was a strange one. Elderly and frail, she defies expectations to have made a good enough show of herself to get a spot here on the illustrious Dead Files. It seems everyone has a chance at that, at least. It was her circumstance that made her interesting. She was custodian of a historical railside signal house that was set in the middle of the industrial expanse in the city's eastern end. All around this once quaint abode were warehouses and reams of rail, relics of prosperity and action from the city's history, now decaying and ugly reminders of a better time. Can't have too many of those, eh? Haley, though, stood against this tide, keeping the old signal house open as a miniature visitor attraction, and even on rare occasions using its ancient wiring and prime position to do some logistical work for the rail barons. Why am I talking about the past? Let us add before to our list of myths, paradoxically consigning the past to the very past we are claiming is fictional. I do seem to have tied myself up, so let's have another swig and carry on. For Haley, protecting this historical property was serious business. It didn't matter if it was from city councilmen trying to clear the land for a new suite of billboards, or from undead monsters clawing at the artisan Victorian brickwork. Haley came at each threat with equal vigour. And so we are treated to a violent beating doled out by a 73-year-old woman wielding a plank of wood as she burst from the front door of her charge and laid low the line-side loiterers. Unfazed by the blood, she calmly retreated to the public toilets adjoining the History of Clay Hauling in Louisville exhibition, cleaned up, then returned with that senior sense of dignity to her mission. She did not relish the violence, nor shy even 1 inch away from it. I think that, folks, is the lesson we can take away from this dead file, if lessons are really the point of this anymore. Next, Haley sortied again to cross the rail yard and ascend the old control tower overlooking the extensive estate. Beating up a couple of yellow-vested interruptions on the way, she soon hiked up the long spiral stairs to the very top. She was a real go-getter, no doubt about that. She came here for 2 things. First, the view of the smoky, monster-infested city, just to confirm that there was no cause for hope, and second, to use the long-range radio this tower sported. She sat there for hours twiddling knobs, catching the occasional sliver of cries for help, but mostly the eternal static that was making itself at home for its long shift on the air. It's the sound of the universe itself, some say. I wonder who will be the last person to hear the universe's call. It won't be Haley Jett, and I dare say it won't be you or I either. Haley, finding that all things were coming to an end, carried on her sensible path. She went for the parking lot to make her escape. Her car was there, alone in an empty sea of spaces left by the ebbing tide of humanity from this desolate place of concrete and steel. Yet alone she was not. A gang of monsters had clustered around her car, itself its own kind of desert island, whose presence only amplified the homogeneity of all else. Haley shrieked at them and bashed with a sturdy hammer, beginning at last to channel the bestial rage that all she had seen of the world that morning must surely stir up in any animal. Several she slew, but not all. She was bit in the scrum, her hands now too injured to hold her keys steady at the lock of her car. With a sigh, she stumbled away and sealed off the bleeding with bundles of clothes taken from the bodies of the defeated. She was wise, Haley. She knew that there was nothing she could do, and that indeed there was nothing she could have done. Therefore it was not a time for regret or self-chastisement, nor was it a time for self-pity. It was a time to stumble from the rail yard gates towards the old park, towards green, the antithesis to the industrial fief of decay. It still grew and strengthened, as all around it, well, nature, the green, the trees, we still have those. Earth will have them in the end. Unless that bacteria... I will not speculate on what might come, given how unpredictable these months have been. yet no speculation is required in the case of Haley Jett, who made it to that park, but perished by further assault when she tried to shelter in the old golf club. Goodbye then. The lesson is, remain calm, don't waste your time and energy looking for ways out or for rescue, and die in a way that seems pleasing to you. That is the legacy of Louisville for the time being, but there is more to say on this city, I believe. My producers, shall we say, want me to head a new media campaign that will detail certain exploits in the city that took place more recently. A revival, a renewal, a respite. I think it might be something good, but I dare say nothing without a good briefing and another bottle. For now, then, the final item on my list is nigh. It is an item that I feared seeing, yet incited no reaction within me when I read those words. I shall read them to you, to test your resolve against mine. Please do not be alarmed, as I bring you a final update on Dead 6, Nolan Hodges. Nolan. We don't think he really broke any rules. We don't think he had any ambition that was too lofty for a dead, or too hard to achieve. Make no mistake, Nolan did better than any dead. But here's what happened. Based on certain plans Nolan drew up before he began acting up, we believe he was aspiring to acquire two main resources that he currently lacked: firelighters and vegetable seeds. He had been apocalyptically unlucky to have not stumbled on any lighters or boxes of matches, and hence was wasting a good part of every day trying to start fires. And his diet of foraged fungus and fillet of fish was losing its do-it-yourself novelty. You can eat the same meal 3 times a day every day, and you'll soon lose any gratitude you have for getting to eat at all. And the good news is that if you really do keep eating the same food over and over, you'll probably get ill from malnutrition. Not always fatally, but it will tip the scales of doom in your direction. Inability to walk, blindness, memory loss. They say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But you'll note everyone who says that died a long time ago, so I wouldn't take their word for it. The point is that Nolan was onto something here. He really did need to upgrade his one-man survival show if it was to continue, and that meant going out into the wider world. Yes, the same world that every single dead we've seen so far dies in quickly. But Nolan was not such an underdog. Remember, he had a working car, and so he could quickly escape any attack. In theory. Allow us to show you the limits of vehicular aid. It is possible that Nolan's first goal was to drive back to whatever beacon of civilization he came from. As he drove out to the long main street that runs over to the highway, he found the way completely barricaded by the massive pile of vehicles at the highway intersection, which had suffered fires and explosions since Nolan last came through, rendering passage with a car impossible. He instead backtracked and took a side road, heading in the opposite direction, soon meandering northwards into farm country. There was one thing that Nolan would have noticed very soon on his drive. Areas distant from the town were still absolutely crawling with the undead. It is easy to forget, people of America, how great the proportion of the population is that is in their car at any given time, especially early in the morning in an area where commutes were long and slow. That's why abandoned vehicles are only the start of your troubles on the road. There are abandoned husks of humanity still close by, and the sight and sound of you trying to veer around all the crashed cars and not get stuck in the mud at the roadside creates an irresistible allure. Even an empty stretch of road can suddenly crowd with predatory pedestrians at the slightest rev of your motor. That means even if you do have somewhere safe to drive to, the very act of driving there unavoidably brings in a horde of hungry hitchhikers. But then again, perhaps you prefer the smell of gasoline in the air as you die. I can see the appeal of dying out on the road. Keep those happy memories of home intact, you know. I almost appreciate being kept here in the studio. I never had to see my home go. Instead, I watched Nolan and see him careen his vehicle down a dirt track in the middle of the woods, surely hoping to stumble across some warehouse or farmyard packed with the very agricultural tools upon which all of human society ultimately relies. Human society. There's another term for your mythical bingo cards. Nolan's dirt road dalliance brought him to a clearing. It was full of zombies. No escape, Nolan, no escape. And you hear that? No, you don't. Out there, his car radio fizzled to life and told him that it would not be possible to escape via this route, and that he should return to his house. Did Nolan listen? No. Nolan was practically deaf, remember? The new brass around here didn't know that and got mad that the subject wasn't listening. Yes, I had a good laugh. Oh, and don't worry, I can insult them all I like, as I know they aren't listening to me either. Generals and doctors and all sorts around here now. The thing is, you don't need a mysterious voice on the air to tell you that you're in trouble if you end up like Nolan did. He had the good sense, and only just enough space, to turn his troubled two-seater around and force his way back towards the road. He could barely see the dirt track he'd used to get out there, for now it was a muddy stream of monsters flowing right towards him. And this flow broke upon the front of his car with truly liquid energy. Nolan had to floor it, taking everything the engine would give him and pushing that force into the flesh and bones blockade. The woods were alive with more monsters approaching yet still, far more than Muldrar could ever have provided. Yes, something was attracting the undead from other towns to this region actually. You've probably heard rumours about that. Some places are practically safe some days because of all the migration going on, whereas others are more dangerous than you can possibly conceive, as Nolan now knew. It was a rough ride, but he made it out. Yes, I bet you thought that was how... we'll get to it. He made it home by the end of the day, wisely abandoning whatever his plans were, coming away with nothing but a car covered in dents, cracks, and once human blood. And he managed to lead a whole army of zombies into Muldrar, although they didn't track him all the way to his little hideaway at least. Hardly makes a difference, because a town that has 30 zombies per street and a town that has 50 is really going to give you about the same level of trouble. Think about it, only 5 to 10 zombies can actually attack you in a given moment, since they would get in each other's way, so a handful is plenty to get you killed, unless you can fight them all, and that's what these generals have ideas for. I'm supposed to tell you more about that next week, so hold out for that. I understand holding out is easier said than done, and none other than Nolan had the classic problem with it. What you don't need, you still have to fight to get. So next came Nolan's wider-scale burglary campaign. He began raiding houses and businesses further afield from his house in search of survival supplies. From what we can tell, he didn't get the critical items he needed, and we can guess why. The Muldrar effect. It's not the kind of town where people are exactly ready for anything, and couldn't afford to be even if they wanted to. Sorry, Nolan. He was fairly good at sneaking around quietly for someone who couldn't necessarily tell how much noise he was making, so that's something. One develops better instincts for such things when you really need them. We're very adaptable, we humans. Can even be adapted into hosts for spreading a superior life form. Fine, I'll get to the point. Here it is. Here's what happened on Nolan's final raid. It began well. He departed his hideout in a thick fog and proceeded north towards a small market, getting in completely unseen. He searched the shelves. He searched the storage cupboards. He lay on the floor and scraped the trash from under the displays. Not a single match, firelighter, or scrap of Mesolithic flint. Saying Muldrar was still in the Stone Age was genuinely too generous. I'm as defeated as you, Nolan. As a minor boon, Nolan discovered some ice cream in a freezer that had retained its cold so well it was only just beginning to melt 2 months into the end times. Probably safe to eat, and eat it Nolan did, with vigour and viv that brings a tear to one's eye. Ice cream. We'll never see something like that again, will we? I hope you enjoyed it, Nolan. By midday, the fog had lifted, and the glass storefront rendered Nolan's ratish gnawing on the fatty goodness clear for all to see. I'm sure the zombies were happy to have their local human fattening himself up. Nolan decided to head home with a hefty bag of food he'd pilfered and got hiking. It should have been easy, but one enterprising monster lumbered after him in abnormally long strides, soon catching up. They do say certain zombies are becoming stronger than others. Scientists. They'll say anything to scare you. And they've been right about everything so far. This one, whatever it was, had to be dealt with. Nolan had a short machete he'd requisitioned during his travels and turned the blade on the pursuer. He slashed right into the beast's neck, the blade getting lodged partially into the bone. The zombie twitched its head, as if it was trying to use the bone to actually grasp the blade in place. A speculation of mine, I'm sure they can't get that clever. But the blade stuck, with Nolan's attempts to pull it loose only pulling the zombie in closer. The thing's mouth was already right there, practically touching Nolan's hand, so it was hardly any surprise when he was bit. Right through a glove, too. Nolan recoiled his arm, and the blade came out this time, so that was something. A savage hacking ensued, which saw the end of the zombie, but one bite is all its life was for, and that bucket list item was neatly ticked. Of course, Nolan couldn't be sure of the trouble he was in. I don't know when he realised it, but it would be soon. At first, he walked on home and wiped the wound off with antibacterial wipes, then carefully bandaged it up. No shortage of first aid gear in his house, just no bloody matches. No matter how good things are, you're still as doomed as your biggest problem. Well, here Nolan had been served a bigger problem, with, I won't say no cure, if sweet rumours are to be believed, but no cure for him, that's for sure. A good day's rest confirmed the worst. Sickness, fever, and inescapable panic and anguish. Symptoms that will all come around even if you aren't infected these days, but when they all come together in a sudden rush, that's how you know the bacteria's set up camp in all the important parts of your body, beginning to release all kinds of chemicals, which when massed will replace those your brain can ordinarily produce to control the body. It's very impressive, I think, if you ignore what it means for us, and indeed for the victim and their conscious experience. And ignore it I think I shall. A firmly recommended course of action. It's over. It's over. The dead files, the real ones, are filed away. That's it. That's all the hope you'll get. One last lesson then. What to do when you're infected. When, do what Nolan did. First, he stripped off to be free of the horrid heat of the fever inside you. The very lesson our first dead Dora taught us, thinking back on it. She had it right from the very beginning. Once suitably undressed, all you need to do is run. Doesn't matter where, doesn't matter for how long. Just get someplace where a monster very much like you won't do much damage. And moreover, a place you wouldn't mind being the very last place you remember. Or remember being yourself, at least. Not sure about that now. Anyway, Nolan, he ran south into the woods, past the fishing pond, into the deeper forest that was so remote that no monsters had made it there. Someone was always going to be the first, and here he was. He ran for hours, far longer and harder than he thought possible. It's the bacteria. It makes you strong. That's what this is all about. I'll tell you more about that when I can, but it's not a crackpot theory anymore. I can't stay on track here. Well, let's just say it and be done with it. Nolan made it to a clearing deep in the forest. Here, a single tree grew amid an untouched glade of rich green, streaked with flakes of autumnal colour. A lovely spot. He sat against the tree, looked south, and took a long breath. In, out. There was a pause, then in again, horridly slow, almost stuttering, like breathing for the very first time. Nolan wasn't Nolan now. So that means we need document him no longer. Be free, everyone, of whatever apprehensions the idea of a survivor might have caused. There are no survivors, not of Nolan's ilk, but there are people alive in the infection zone. They are not survivors or deads, but something else. And that is all the insane special depot care about. Hence my new job. Tune in next time to the Dead Files to see exciting new updates on technological developments in invasive species management that promise to turn this war around and bring on a golden age for humanity. Yeah, something like that. A little hard to believe, but it goes without saying that stranger things have happened. Hang on then, and don't worry about being caught dead acting like a dead, as no one's going to monitor you anymore. It's all about this program. So stay alive, and at the very least stay tuned. Even if you don't make it, you'll see what it was all for. What it was all for. Yeah, what it was all for. It's all going exactly according to plan, eh? Or is that what they want you to... Wait, I haven't... The drink's out. Where's the general? I feel awful. It's too much. What are you... They're laughing at me. This is their doing. What was... Alright, that's enough. Get him out of here. Leave me alone. Where are you taking me? Can anyone hear me? They're crazy. It's their fault. If there's a man in your unit who's turned, you send him outside. I'm not gonna tell you again. Well, the place looks good enough. We'll see what we can do. Keep this nation alive for a little bit. Make a new nation that's even better. Alright, that's the bottle, huh? And he drunk all of it. He's a lucky man. He's a lucky man.